Well, let's take a look at the weekend papers, and to help me delve beneath the headlines is Susan Fajana-Thomas. She's a Labour Party councillor here in London and also the director of the Nigerian Women in Diaspora Leadership Forum. Good morning to you, Susan. Let's start with the National.
Good morning.
This is... They've got the lead story here is about IS and the suicide bombers in Libya. They're saying that 45 killed, 70 injured. We're also covering that story here on the station.
It is. This story is quite interesting in the sense of what the Libyan people are saying. What they're saying is they're now blaming their government, that the way the government has handled the Egyptians that were arrested in Libya without transparency, without knowing where they are, that's why they're having this retaliation attack on Libyan soil.
But it's difficult, isn't it? Because Libya is split on two fronts. You know, when I interviewed Chris Doyle earlier this week and asked him about, you know, the army being stretched, you've got two different governments running simultaneous. You've got no unity in the government.
But that's what is important. I think what the UN is actually recommending is it time now for people to come on the table to talk as Libyans, to talk together and find solution to what is happening in Libya to avoid this sort of occurrences, and that is quite important.
I mean, are you concerned reading about the sort of the way IS is targeting all of these types of countries that have instability in terms of political instability as well as, you know, security instability?
Yeah, I'm concerned, but having said that, that's what insurgents do. Because they know they've got the ground, they've got the environment where they can grow instability. That's what they would do that wherever there is an instability in the government or in the nation, insurgents can easily move in and find their ground, and that's exactly what they're doing in Libya.
Now, still on the same newspaper further down, there's a story about Iraqi soldiers expected to help in the fight against IS in Mosul. And we saw yesterday the US revealing their strategy, which seemed like a very odd thing to do, to say, right, this is when we're going to attack and this is how we're going to do it.
I think President Obama is doing that because he needs the authorization and because probably in the past he has said the US military are not going to be on the ground in Iraq since they withdrawn last year.
But so it's a massive backtrack, though, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, when they moved the soldiers out of Iraq, there was a lot of support, obviously, from the American public. And he said that he would not put boots on the ground and that they would just support through airstrikes. Now this seems to be, you know, he's reneging on what he said. And there isn't full public backing yet. The support from the public is still under 50%.
I think what is happening is they believe, the U.S. President Obama believe Mosul is a strategic area that needed to be within, that needed to be taken off ISIS. So that's why he's ready to do what he's doing. I think in his way, this is how he's trying to say, let's be transparent, let's tell people what we are doing to galvanize the support. I think this is why they've come out to say this is what we're trying to do, this is how we want to go about things. That's what I believe. Do
we think the Iraqi army are good enough to be able to fight off IS? We saw the last time when they were in battle with IS in Mosul, they just took their uniforms off and ran away. They left all their weapons and their tanks behind. I don't think they're good enough, and I think this is again why the US need to support them. I think they're just coming back. They're not good enough at all to fight them, so they still need the external support. So they do need the Americans. They do need the Americans. OK, well, let's move on to This Day Live. This is the Nigerian newspaper, and of course, coverage again once more about Boko Haram and how it's affecting the elections. We know that the elections were supposed to happen on the 14th of February. They were delayed, and that was due to the issues of the rising violence in the northeast and concerns about safety.
Yeah, the election was postponed because of this, but it seems a week ago we were saying we don't know what the magic wand will be, but it seems things are moving on the ground. I think the military offensive, the airstrike in the last week, they have actually made a difference, but we hope that will continue. But what is important, or what we've heard, is because of the airstrike, they've had a lot of Boko Haram that have gone to villages to retaliate, killing people. Though these are not reported, but there are casualties on the ground. But
I mean, we don't have enough evidence as of yet to support these claims. I mean, if these claims are substantiated, it's significant, because 300 is quite a lot. But then again, we don't know how many Boko Haram fighters there are, and you have obviously this coalition force. Very briefly, we have the Weekender, and of course this marks the anniversary of the Christchurch earthquake, which claimed many lives. A human interest story there.
I think my heart goes out to people affected with this crisis, and I hope it's just to take. Lives continue as it says in the newspaper, and I hope they will have that serenity to embrace what has happened to them and move on.
Yeah, it's difficult though, isn't it? Because it's Mother Nature. I mean, these sorts of things happen all the time. The quake was 6.3 magnitude in the region of the south of the island, and I think it cost something like $40 billion in order to rebuild. And the analysts are saying that it's going to take the economy anything between 50 and 100 years to completely recover. It was extraordinarily bad.
It was. It's both human and economic. The impact on the nation is quite massive.
OK, Susan, thank you very much for your comments on the papers. We'll have more from you later. And this is looking at the obviously very, very difficult situation in Ukraine. And one of Britain's most senior commanders is warning of quite a chilling strategic play by Russia here.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, there is meant to be a ceasefire agreement, which is just on paper, because nothing in the last week, the ceasefire was meant to start last Sunday, but in the last week, as it has been said, there's been 300 violations of the ceasefire. So actually, in reality, there has been no ceasefire in that region. And there is a caution. I think there is a bit of an exaggeration when you think about the warning from the security chiefs. But I think we need to be cautious.
Yeah, and he's talked about old-style Soviet land grab tactics as well as political agitation and sabotage. And he actually makes an analogy with World War II, which is, quite serious.
It is quite serious. I think there's been a bit, like I said, there's a bit of exaggeration in his warning. And this new force the UK is setting up to use various old tactics and new tactics, including social media warfare. That is a bit, what is that about?
I mean, something has to be done, doesn't it? We've seen more than 5,500 people lost their lives on both sides, and, the UN say that figure could well be higher. Let's quickly move on to the next paper, though, and let's have a look at jihad on the dole. This, of course, is the Herald Sun in Australia, and this is about figures being released saying that 96% of Australian foreign fighters have been on benefits by the time they went to the Middle East to fight and train with Islamic State.
This is telling us something about our society, and this is not just peculiar to Australia. It's everywhere in the world where you find insurgency. This is what happened. There's this category of people you find, people they believe they've got nothing to lose, and most of them are people who doesn't have a stable family life, doesn't have job to go to, so they're able to leave everything they've got at a moment and go away to fight anywhere they want to go. So it's not about Australia. When you deep down into other areas in the world where there are insurgency, this is the category of people you find. And this is saying to government all over the world about changes of policies in terms of how do we support people that are marginalized in the society.
We do need to kind of get the public involved there, don't we? Because, you know, a counter-terrorism task force being set up isn't enough. You kind of need people to say, actually, I've seen something, or you need people to come forward and work together with governments, don't you? Let's move on, finally, to the Greek newspaper about a tentative deal for extension agreed at the Eurogroup, a massive relief probably for Greece, if not for the rest of Europe and the markets. This was the third meeting in 10 days. Ministers arrived in Brussels.
It is, yeah, it is a relief, but I think it will be a short-term relief. As it is, there is 4 months extension, which is a good thing for people in Eurozone. But bearing in mind that this postponement is to enable Greece to submit a robust economic reform. And this is the new government went into the elections campaigning against austerity measures. I don't see how the proposal they will put forward to the European Commission, to the European Central Bank and IMF would not involve austerity measure. So they're in between. They want to satisfy the electorate who voted for them because they're campaigning against austerity measure. At the same time, I think the financial institution, IMF, European Commission and European Central Bank would like to see reform that includes austerity measure.
OK, we'll be interested to see what happens in the next 4 months.
4 months.
OK.